We're getting an anonymous tip. There are illegal immigrants on a cargo ship. Container ventilation is broken. People inside are suffocating. The port security officer hung up the phone, turned around in panic. Captain James Sullivan, 67 years old, was a customs officer at the Seattle port, at his old desk doing routine paperwork. "Captain, emergency. There might be illegal immigrants on the MV Pacific Star." James stood up, looked at the port. A massive cargo ship had just docked, 400 containers, each one 40 feet long. Customs Chief Rodriguez came running. "James, there are 400 containers on that ship. We don't know which one they're in. Opening all of them will take 6 hours. James looked at the ship. The sun was hot, 95 degrees. The containers were metal. Inside could be 120 to 140 degrees. If ventilation is broken, they'll die in 2 to 3 hours. James had been a cargo ship captain for 40 years. He knew how every container was arranged, what temperature they reached. "We don't have 6 hours, James said. "I know which container." Seattle Port, 9 a.m. A routine. Wednesday morning, Captain James Sullivan, 67 years old, sat in a small office. Customs officer, paperwork, manifest checks, tax calculations. 40 years ago, he was a cargo ship captain. He crossed the Pacific Ocean hundreds of times. Seattle to Tokyo, Shanghai to Los Angeles. He knew every route, every port. But now he sat at a desk. He didn't want to retire. But mandatory retirement age, 65. The shipping company let him go. "Captain Sullivan, you're too old. Ships need young captains." James accepted the customs officer position to stay at the port. At least he was near the ships. He could see the ocean. But deep down, he missed the ships. That morning, he was doing routine work. A cargo ship, MV Pacific Star, had just arrived from Shanghai. 400 containers, electronics, textiles, furniture. James checked the manifest. Everything looked normal. Taxes paid, documents complete. But suddenly, the phone rang. Customs office, James Sullivan. The voice was tense. "Captain, this is Agent Sarah Chen, Homeland Security. We have an emergency." James straightened up. "Yes?" "We received an anonymous tip. There might be human trafficking on the MV Pacific Star. Illegal immigrants in one of the containers. Ventilation system is broken. People inside might be dying." James's heart raced. "How many people?" "We don't know. The tipster said 10 to 15 people, but we haven't confirmed." "Which container?" "We don't know. There are 400 containers." James looked out the window at the ship. 400 containers, 40 feet each. Opening all of them would take hours. "I'm coming." James ran to the port. He was 67 but fast. Maritime work had kept him fit. He reached the ship, MV Pacific Star, a massive cargo vessel, 650 feet long. On deck, containers stacked 5 levels high. Customs Chief Rodriguez was there. Agent Chen was arriving with her Homeland Security team. Rodriguez was panicking. "James, 400 containers. We don't know which one. If we open all of them, it'll take 6 to 8 hours. James looked at the ship. The sun was overhead. Temperature 95 degrees. Metal containers baking in the sun. Inside the container could be 120 to 140 degrees. If ventilation is broken, people sweating, losing water, oxygen depleting. James calculated 2 to 3 hours, maximum. 6 hours is too late, James said. We have to find it in 2 hours. Agent Chen arrived. "Captain Sullivan, Homeland Security. You know the situation. How do we find them?" James looked at the ship. Containers in colors, red, blue, green. Each one a company, each one different cargo. "Do we have the manifest?" James asked. Rodriguez handed him a tablet. "Here, list of 400 containers, contents, weights." James looked at the list, scanned it. Most containers, electronics, furniture, textiles. But James was looking for something, a detail, an anomaly. 40 years as a cargo ship captain, loaded and unloaded thousands of containers. He knew which container went where, what temperature they reached. If you're trafficking humans, which container would you choose? James examined the manifest. Agent Chen and Rodriguez waited. James thought, human trafficking, 10 to 15 people, inside a container. Which container would they choose? 1. On deck or inside the hold? Deck, hot, sun, dangerous. Hold, cooler, safer, probably the hold. 2. Which level? Lower levels of the ship are cooler. Upper levels are hotter. Lower level, maybe second or third deck. 3. What contents? Electronics? No, too valuable. Frequently inspected. Furniture? No, heavy, hard to move. Textiles? Maybe. Light, room for people. Textile containers? 4. Which company? James looked at the list. Most containers from known companies, but one was odd. Golden Phoenix Logistics. Never heard of it. A small company. From Shanghai. James examined that container. Container number, GPLU 4782931. Contents, textiles, cotton fabrics. Weight, 18 tons, 18 tons. Too heavy for cotton fabrics. Normally, textile containers are 12 to 15 tons. Extra weight. People? James checked the container's location. Location, hold 2, deck 3, row D, position 12, inside the hold. Lower decks, protected from sun, perfect spot for human traffickers. James turned to Agent Chen. Container GPLU 4782931, hold 2, deck 3. Chen was surprised. How do you know? 40 years experience. That container is an anomaly. Weight is excessive. Location is suspicious. Company is unknown. Rodriguez said, But are you sure? There are 400 containers. If we open the wrong one, I'm sure, James said. That's the container. The team boarded the ship. James, Agent Chen, Rodriguez, 4 customs officers, 2 medical personnel for emergency. The ship's captain met them. I'm Captain Zhang. What's happening? Agent Chen explained. Human trafficking tip. We need to open container GPLU 4782931. Captain Zhang was shocked. Human trafficking? On my ship? Impossible. Where's the container? James asked. Hold 2, but it's hard to reach. 5 levels of containers. We need to use the crane. James looked at his watch. Now, 10:30 a.m. The tip came at 9 a.m. 1.5 hours passed. How much time left? 30 minutes? 1 hour? We need to be fast, James said. The team went down to the hold. Hold 2. It was dark. Only emergency lights. Containers were stacked. 5 levels high. Each one 40 tons. James found the container. GPLU 4782931. On level 3. 2 more containers on top of it. We have to remove the containers above, Captain Zhang said. With the crane, takes 20 minutes. James approached the container, put his ear against it. Silence, no sound. Are we too late? No, maybe they're sleeping, maybe unconscious. As oxygen decreases, people pass out. Start the crane, James said, now. While the crane worked, James waited and remembered 2005. 2005, Pacific Ocean Young. Captain James Sullivan, 47 years old, was commanding the cargo ship MV Sea Trader, Shanghai to Los Angeles. One night, the crew heard something. From the hold, banging sounds, screams. James went down to the hold. Sound was coming from one of the containers. They opened it. Inside, 8 people. Chinese illegal immigrants, families, women, children. Ventilation was broken. They'd been at sea for 5 days. No water, no food, oxygen depleted. One child had died, 6 years old. Dehydration. James never forgot. That child's face, the mother's screams. And that day, he made a promise. Never again. Never again will anyone die on my ship. Now, 2025. James opened his eyes. 20 years passed, but that promise still stood. This time, I'll find them in time. The crane lifted the 2 containers on top. Took 25 minutes. Now, GPLU 4782931 was accessible. James approached the container. Door locks were there. Heavy, metal. Cutting tool, James said. An officer brought a hydraulic cutter, cut the locks. 5 minutes. The door opened. Hot air burst out. 130 to 140 degrees. Unbearable. Inside was dark. They shined flashlights and saw 12 people collapsed on the floor, motionless. Women, men, a teenage girl. They looked Latin American. Agent Chen shouted, "Medical personnel, now!" Two medics rushed in, checked pulses. Pulse present, all alive, but dehydration and hyperthermia. They need hospital immediately. James breathed a sigh of relief. We found them in time. The team carried the 12 people out, on stretchers, put oxygen masks on them, started IVs. One woman opened her eyes, looked at James, spoke in Spanish. Gracias, gracias. James smiled. De nada, you're safe. Ambulances took the 12 people to the hospital. All alive, serious but stable. Agent Chen turned to James. Captain Sullivan, you saved them. You found the right one among 400 containers. How did you do it? James shrugged. 40 years experience, I know containers. What weight is normal? What's abnormal? What location makes sense? Rodriguez said, but no one in the police could do this. You're a retired captain, a customs officer. But you're an expert. James looked at the ship. Retirement doesn't end expertise. It just changes the title. Agent Chen began the investigation. Golden Phoenix Logistics was a shell company, registered in China but not real. The container was rented by human traffickers. 12 South Americans, Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador, paid thousands of dollars, promised safe passage to America. But when they boarded the ship, the ventilation system was accidentally broken. The traffickers didn't care. Agent Chen, if you hadn't found them, they'd all be dead. In 2 to 3 hours. James nodded. I just did my job. The next day, news spread. 67-year-old retired captain saves 12 immigrants from death. James's photo was in newspapers. TV news called him a hero. But James didn't want this attention. He was a modest man. I just did my job, he said. Homeland Security thanked James. Captain Sullivan, your expertise saved 12 lives. We're in your debt. Port management called James to the office. The director said, James, you're our most valuable employee. We're considering you for promotion. Assistant Port Security Chief. James smiled. Thank you, but I'll continue being a customs officer. I like being near the ships. 2 weeks later, James was working at the port. A woman came to his office, spoke Spanish, had a translator. I'm Maria, one of the 12 people in the container. I came to see you. James stood up. Maria, how are you? I'm good, released from hospital. Because of you. You saved me, Maria cried. I came from Honduras to see my children, to work in America, but the traffickers, they were going to kill us. James held her hand. You're safe now. Homeland Security will help you. Maria nodded. But you found me. 400 containers. How did you know? James smiled. Experience. 40 years at sea. I know ships. Maria said, you're not just a customs officer. You're like an angel. James was embarrassed. No, I just did my job. A month later, Homeland Security launched a new protocol. The Sullivan Protocol. Using James's methodology, container anomalies would be analyzed at all ports. Weight anomalies, suspicious locations, unknown companies. James gave training to young customs officers. How do you read a manifest? How do you recognize anomalies? A young officer asked, Captain Sullivan, you're 67 years old. You're retired, but you're still this active. How? James smiled. Retirement doesn't mean stopping. It just means continuing differently. I love ships, I love the ocean, and I love saving people. 6 months later, James was still a customs officer at Seattle Port. But now, he wasn't just doing paperwork. He was a Homeland Security consultant, providing expertise on human trafficking cases. Every ship that arrived, James checked the manifest, looked for anomalies. And in 3 months, he found 2 more cases. Total of 18 people saved. One day, he stood at the port, looked at the ocean. Sunset. 40 years ago, he was a young captain, commanding ships traveling the world. Now, he was 67, retired, a customs officer, but he was still near the ships, still seeing the ocean, and still saving lives. Retirement isn't the end. It's just a new beginning. If Captain James Sullivan's story moved you, subscribe to Veterans Tales, like this video. Share your thoughts about the importance of experience in the comments. Retirement isn't the end, it's the beginning. Do you have a James in your life who uses their experience? Share in the comments. See you in the next story. See you.